Assalamu alaikum, dear students. In this lecture we are going to study about morphemic analysis. The lecture outline is we will study about morphemes, the types of morphemes. We have studied it before, but we are just going to revise it, and then the morphemic analysis. So what is actually the morphemic analysis? Morphemic analysis means the analysis which is actually based on morphemes, the analysis of the words or the form of word in terms of their morphemes. So what is morphemic analysis? A strategy in which the meanings of words can be determined or inferred by examining their meaningful parts. So in morphemic analysis, we are going to analyze the words, the meanings of the words by examining their meaningful parts in terms of morphemes. So just we are going to revise the previous lectures or the previous topic we have studied about morphemes. So what are morphemes? Morphemes are the minimal meaningful units of language. They cannot be divided further. Like morphemes are those parts of the words that carries a meaning, a basic meaning, but they cannot be divided further. For example, we have studied the word teach. The word teach, or we can say it's a complete morpheme. The word teach carries a meaning, it's a meaningful unit, and it's a minimal meaningful unit. How? The word or morpheme teach cannot be divided further. We analyzed the structure of words in terms of morphemes, as they are the structural units of morphology. Like we have studied before that the structural units of morphology are the morphemes. So in morphemic analysis, the word morphemic shows that we are going to analyze the form or structure of a word, that how a word is formed, how a word is actually structured. We are going to study it in terms of morphemes. So what is morphology? We have studied it is the study of forms or structure of words. Then how actually the words are structured, or how basically the form of word is basically structured. So morphemic analysis helps to determine the structure of words in terms of morphemes. So we have studied previously about morphology in detail, about the morphemes, about their types, about further how the types are classified. So in morphemic analysis, we are going to analyze the words, that how the words are actually formed with the help of morphemes, and which type of morphemes are involved in particular formation of any word. So let's revise. So we have studied before the classification of morphemes. How we have studied? We have studied that morphemes are basically classified into free morphemes and bound morphemes. So what are free morphemes? The morphemes that can stand by themselves as single words are called free morphemes. This type of morpheme is independent and can convey meaning on its own. Like free morphemes are the single words that cannot depend on any other morpheme or word in order to give a proper meaning. For example, we have studied the word or morpheme teach, eat, happy, love, make, tall, ball. These are the words, or we can say morphemes, that carries a meaning, that are meaningful units, and they are minimal meaningful units. Like we cannot further divide teach, we cannot further divide eat, we cannot further divide happy. They are the basic units that carries a meaning and cannot be divided further. So we have studied before the types of free morphemes, that what are the types of free morphemes. So free morphemes are basically divided into two types. The first one is the lexical and the second one is the functional. So we have studied that lexical morphemes are those morphemes which carries the basic meaning, that carries the content of the word, that carries actually the basic message. For example, the word eat, or we can say teach, it is actually a content word. The lexical morphemes includes nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and verbs, which are actually performing a meaningful function in a sentence. Like, I eat mangoes. So here, eat and mangoes are the lexical morphemes that carries the message, that is conveying a proper content of the sentence. So the second one we have studied before, the type of free morpheme, is the functional. By functional meaning, we get to know that functional morphemes are those morphemes that do not play any part in the content of the message, or they do not carry the basic meaning, but they are somehow performing a grammatical function in the sentence. For example, they are playing football. So in this sentence, they are playing football, we are getting the message of playing of a football. How? By the word playing and the word football. Playing is a verb and football is a noun. So these two are the lexical morphemes, and the functional are what? The pronoun, the auxiliaries, the conjunctions, the prepositions. So they is a pronoun, it's a functional. It's actually not giving us a message, but it's performing a grammatical function in completion of a sentence. So they are is actually basically the functional morphemes. Bound morphemes. We have studied earlier what are bound morphemes. The morphemes that cannot stand alone are called as bound morphemes. This type of morpheme cannot convey meaning on its own, and it is dependent on other words to convey its meaning. So bound morphemes are those morphemes that cannot stand alone. They cannot convey a complete meaning. Rather, they are dependent on the free morphemes in conveying a message properly. For example, the word easily. In this word is divided into two morphemes, easy and ly. The ly cannot give a meaning unless it is connected or it is joined with the bis or free morpheme, that is easy. So in connection with the free morpheme, only then the bound morpheme ly is actually conveying the proper meaning of easily. So similarly, the bound morphemes have also further types like the free morphemes. So free morphemes are divided into functional and lexical, and bound morphemes are divided into inflectional and derivational. So we have studied what is inflectional and what is derivational. So inflectional are those bound morphemes which are actually performing a grammatical function in the sentence. For example, they can tell us about either the tense is past, future, or continuous, or they can tell us about the singularity, or either the word is plural, or they can tell us about the possessive forms, like we can say mango is a singular, mangoes are, by addition of es morphemes, we are getting the meaning that it is a plural. Or we can say cat, singular, cats is actually as by addition of s, that is bound morpheme, that is bound and inflectional morpheme is actually playing the function that from singular cat to plural cats. Or we can say talk to talking. So ing here is a bound morpheme. Which type of bound morpheme? It's inflectional morpheme that is actually conveying the sense of the continuous tense, that the talking, from talk to talking, that something is progressive. Okay, we have studied about the derivational morphemes. What are derivational morphemes? The morphemes which changes the grammatical category of the word. Like they are actually by the name deriving another word from the base, or we can say the root morpheme. For example, teach is a verb and we have made another word teacher. So teacher is a noun. So from verb to noun, how we have made from verb to a noun word? By addition of an er bound morpheme. Which type of bound morpheme? That is derivational. So from the class of verb we have changed the grammatical category of the word, that is the noun teacher. So we have studied before the bound morphemes are actually the affixes in the English language. What are affixes? We will revise in detail after this. So we have studied that derivational morphemes are actually those which changes the grammatical category of the word, like from verb to noun, from noun to adjective, or from verb to adjective. So they are actually changing the grammatical category of the word. But sometimes it's an exceptional case with the derivational morphemes, that in some cases derivational morphemes are those which change the grammatical category of a word, but in some cases they do not change the grammatical category of a word. Like it's exceptional with the derivational morphemes that in most of the time they do change the grammatical category of the word, but sometimes in some cases the derivational morphemes makes another word, derives another word, but except changing the grammatical category of the word. For example, the word block, we have made another word unblock. So block is also a verb, unblock is also a verb. The grammatical category of the word is changed, but by addition of a word addition of a morpheme un. It's not a word, it's a morpheme. Unblock is a word and un is a morpheme. So by addition of un, we have derived from block to unblock, that we have derived another word by addition of morpheme un, but the grammatical category of the word is same. Like the block is also a verb, and grammatically unblock is also a verb. Like take another example, the word happy to unhappy. Happy, here both happy and unhappy are adjectives. Like happy is also an adjective, unhappy is also an adjective, but the meaning has changed, but the class is same. The derivational bound morpheme has not changed the grammatical category of the word. The derivational morpheme un has not changed the grammatical category of the word happy. So what are affixes? Let's take a review. It is the attachment with the stem or root morpheme to add the information, and it carries additional information. So we have studied in detail in previous lectures that what are basically the affixes. Affixes are also the morphemes, but we have given a term affixes. Affixes to what? That are actually the attachment. So bound morphemes are actually the attachments with the base, or we can say the free morphemes. Like unhappy. Unhappy word contains two morphemes. Un is a bound and happy is a free. So un is actually an affix. We have studied previously in detail about the affixes. So we have studied about the affixes. What are actually the affixes? The types of affixes. Affixes are morphemes, are actually the bound morphemes. And what are their types? Prefix. We have studied the attachment at the beginning of a word, at the beginning of a root. Like unhappy, we have un at the beginning of the attachment with the stem happy. So un is actually a actually an affix. Which type of affix? It's a prefix. So suffix is actually the attachment with the stem, or we can say the root or the base morpheme or a word to modify the meaning. How? We have the word detailed. So in detailed, the word contains two morphemes. How? The word detail and the past form ed. So the ed is actually a bound morpheme and is actually an affix. Which type of affix? The attachment at the end of a word or a morpheme. So it's a suffix. Infix, the attachment of a morpheme in the middle of the word. For example, brother-in-law. We have studied spoons full, cups full. So here the morphemes in the beginning of two stems, or we can say bases, are actually the infixes. So the next one we have studied ablaut. What is ablaut? So ablaut is actually no attachment at the beginning or at the end or in the middle. It's actually the change in the vowel of a root sound, root word, like from man to men, singular man to plural men. So singular man, and in men the vowel sound is changed. So the last zero suffix, or we can say the null morpheme. We have studied that those words or morphemes that do not cause the change apparently, but the meaning is changed. For example, the word sheep is as it is used when it is used in the plural form. Singular and plural of sheep are the same. So now another term, a new term, that is compounding. Which how words are formed? So a compounding process is also involved. We have studied about the morphemes in detail, the types of morphemes, bound, free morphemes, the type of bound morphemes, the type of free morphemes, and the affixes, and then further the types of affixes. Now the word is compounding. So what is compounding? This is the process in the word formation, or we can say when we are analyzing the structure or the form of word, where two stem or root words are placed together to form a complete word. Like when two bases or two roots are actually combined to form a complete word. For example, the word cupcake. So we cannot say that the cup is actually the root and the cake is the suffixation, or we can say the suffix. It is the attachment. No, this is not the case. We gave another name to this process as compounding, where two roots carries the basic meaning. They are free morphemes. They are not bound. They can convey their meaning alone, but they are combined together. They are compounded together to make a new word. So how? Cup is another word or morpheme. Cake is another word or morpheme. But we have made a new word by combining, by placing together two of them to make a complete word. So how? Cupcake. So the word next is basketball. So how? The basket is actually a stem, is actually a free morpheme, is actually a word that carries a basic meaning. Again, the ball is actually a free morpheme. It's actually a word that can stand on its own and it carries the basic meaning. It's a stem, or we can say the root, or we can say the base. So the basket and ball are placed together to form a new complete word, that is basketball. So done with compounding. So what is compounding we have studied. So now we are going to practice that how we do the morphemic analysis of the word. If someone asks from you to do a morphemic analysis of a word, so we are going to study that how we are going to do the morphemic analysis. So the word here is unblocking. So we are going to do the morphemic analysis of the word unblocking. So how we are going to do? We are going to do the morphemic analysis word by word, that how the word unblocking is actually structured, is actually formed. So we have first, the main step is to divide a complete word into the morphemes. That we have to first see that how much morphemes are present in the word. So we have divided. Unblocking contains 3 morphemes: un, block, and ing. So these 3 are the morphemes in a complete word unblocking. So now, first we have divided the complete word into its morphemes, then come towards the type of morphemes, that either the morphemes are bound or free. So here we can see that in unblocking, un is a bound morpheme, block is a free morpheme, and ing, like ing, is again a bound morpheme. So we have studied that bound or free. Now which type of bound and which type of free? In bound, we have seen that the un is not that type of morpheme that is showing some grammatical function of a word, but it's a derivational morpheme. So same we have studied before, from block to unblock, the verb category is the same. The category is verb. Unblock or block are the same verb categories, but here the un is derivational. Block is actually a free morpheme. Which type of free? Either we have to see it's functional or we have to see it's lexical. So it is block is a verb. It carries, it's conveying a proper message or content. So block is again free. And which type of free? It's lexical. And then ing is a bound morpheme. So which type of bound morpheme? The word ing is showing the tense, that something is in progressive state. So it's inflectional. Divided into 3 morphemes. Then further the morphemes are divided into which type of morphemes, either free or bound. Then what type of free, what type of bound. So now we are going to divide it into the affixes un, block, and ing. Un is we have studied the attachment at the beginning is a prefix. So un is a prefix, ing is a suffix, that is attachment at the end, and the block is actually the root, or we can say the stem, or we can say the base. So this is how we have done the morphemic analysis of the word unblocking. So now let's take another example. The word stressed. We are going to do the morphemic analysis of the word stressed. First, we have to divide the word into morphemes. Stress and ed, 2 morphemes. Now, what is free and what is bound? So, stress is actually a free morpheme. Ed is actually a bound morpheme. So, which type of free? Either functional or lexical. So, stress is actually conveying a proper message. So, it's a lexical. And then, what it is? It's actually in terms of affixes, it's actually a root, or we can say a base, or we can say the stem. And ed is actually a bound. Which type of bound? It's showing the past tense, showing the tense of a word. So which is the morphemes that shows the tense is actually the inflectional morphemes. So which type of bound? Not derivational, it's inflectional. And what it is in terms of affixes? It's a suffix, that is attachment at the end. So in this way we have analyzed the word stressed in terms of morphemes. This is actually called the morphemic analysis, Or we can also say, or we can also term it as morphological analysis. Morphological analysis, that is analysis in terms of morphemes. So let's take another example. The word horses. Again, doing morphemic analysis, two morphemes, horse and s. Horse is a free, s is a bound. Which type of free? Horse is either lexical or functional. It's actually a noun conveying a proper message, so it's a lexical. Which type of bound? The word is showing the plural form of horse, so it's the inflectional. Now in terms of affixes, the horse is actually a stem and s is actually an attachment at the end, so it's a suffix. The word improper. Morphemic analysis, im and proper. Two morphemes, which is bound, which is free. Im is bound and free is the proper one. So which type of bound? It's a derivational. Free, it's a lexical. Derivational, then which type of bound? It's a prefix. Then proper is actually a root or a stem. Then the word teacher. Morphemic analysis, division of the word into morphemes. Teach and er, two morphemes, which is bound and which is free. Teach is actually free and er is actually a bound morpheme. Then which type of free? Either lexical or either functional. Teach is actually a verb and conveying a message, carries a content, so it's a lexical one. Then which type of bound? It's er. It's changing the grammatical category of the word teach, so it's derivational. Either it's changing the grammatical category, or we have studied in some cases there are exceptions. In some cases derivational morphemes do not change the category, but in this case it's changing the category from verb teach to the noun teacher. And now in terms of affixes, teach is a root, or we can say the base, or we can say the stem, and er is the attachment at the end, so it's a suffix. Take another example, stronger. Morphemic analysis, strong and er. Strong is a free morpheme, er is a bound morpheme. Which type of free morpheme? Strong is an adjective, so it's a lexical, carries a meaning, and er is a bound morpheme, stronger, so it's a comparative form. We have studied before the comparatives. The superlatives are actually represented by inflectional morphemes. So er, stronger, er is actually giving the comparative of strong, so it's inflectional. And then in terms of affixes, strong is actually a root or a stem, and er is actually the attachment at the end, so it's a suffix. Take another example, evolutionary. Evolutionary, in morphemic analysis we are going to analyze the word in terms of morphemes. So division of the word evolution and ary by combining is actually a evolutionary. Evolution is a free and ary is a bound morpheme. So which type of free morpheme? Evolution is actually carries the basic meaning, it is conveying a message, so it's a lexical. And then which type of bound? Is actually evolutionary, so it's changing the category of a word, that is from evolution to evolutionary, so it's derivational. Then what in terms of affixes? Evolution is a root, or we can say the base, or we can say the stem, and ary is actually the attachment at the end, so it's a suffix. So this is how we are going to analyze the words in terms of morphemes, or we can say this is how we do the morphemic analysis of words. So these are some words for your practice. The word drawing, smiling, smarter, studied, easily, introduces, refill. You people are going to practice it by yourself, that how we are going to analyze the word morpheme in a morphemic analysis. Drawing, again, first we have to find the morphemes, then which type of morphemes, either bound or free. If it's bound, then which type of bound. If it's free, then which type of free. Then in terms of affixes, which is the stem, which is actually the attachment, and if it's their attachment, any attachment, then which type of attachment, in the middle, at the end, or at the beginning. So we have to name it as. So these words are for your practice. You have to do it on yourself, that how we are going to do the morphemic analysis of these words. So this is all for today's lecture. This is the reference. You can take guide from it. Thank you.